Good job, Linda. Good job.
Everybody's up from the lower level.
I love it. I love it. I think Beth's getting it. That's good.
No. Well, actually, it's Leanne. I think it's Leanne because I'm AJ, I usually rally town. You know what? Yeah, I think we need more people. Go red for women. You don't have to take it. But I'm running out of time this morning. I go right now. Once we get a quorum, they lost. That's Is this the end of your marathon? And I have to say, if anybody wants to, I can carry with your best. I'd like to do like a marathon. But I love it's awesome. And then I have to train it. And then once I do that, that's fine. I'll have to do it for a rally. And then I need to go. I have an expense but yeah, there's like I'll see if I can put you a thing. I went to David for my master's, and my kids have never forgotten it. I know. Mary Moses from oh, thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. Good morning to our last day together. This morning we are going to offer our prayers through writing and journaling. If you brought your own journal, that's fantastic. If not, there is blank white paper on your tables, so I invite you to grab one of those. We will read together the prayer that's on the maybe half sheet on your tables called Create Space for the Stranger. And this will be the foundation for our, our prompt for our writing. We'll read it twice, just so you can hear it. And then after we're done reading, I'll read it once, and then Brandon agreed to read it once. And after we're done, I just invite you to start writing. So this is really a way for the Holy Spirit to speak to you through the words that you put on the page, right? So literally I will keep time. You don't have to worry about that. I'll try to play some quiet, reflective music. Just write. Whatever comes to your mind, whatever is in your heart, if it's a response to this prayer or a response to our time together, there are no rules when you write to God. So don't worry about your grammar. Don't worry about going back to edit. Just write. And I know that's really hard for some of us, but just enjoy the time to put some words on paper, and then we'll come back together for a few minutes afterwards. We can all just take a breath, place ourselves in the presence of God, and create space for the stranger. In our world full of strangers, estranged from their own past, culture, and country, from their neighbors, friends, and family, from their deepest self and their God. We witness a painful search for a hospitable place where life can be lived without fear and where community can be found. Although many, we might even say most, strangers in this world become easily the victim of a fearful hostility, it is possible for men and women, and obligatory for Christians, to offer an open and hospitable place where strangers can cast off their strangeness and become our fellow human beings. The movement from hostility to hospitality is hard and full of difficulties. Our society seems to be increasingly full of fearful, defensive, aggressive people, anxiously clinging to their property and inclined to look at their surrounding world with suspicion, always expecting an enemy to suddenly appear, intrude, and do harm. But still, that is our vocation, to convert the hostis into a hospice, the enemy into a guest, and to create the free and fearless space where brotherhood and sisterhood can be formed and fully experienced.
In our world full of strangers, estranged from their own past, culture, and country, from their neighbors, friends, and family, from their deepest self, and their God. We witness a painful search for a hospitable place where life can be lived without fear and where community can be found. Although many, we might say even most, strangers in this world become easily the victim of fearful hostility, it is possible for men and women, and obligatory for Christians, to offer an open and hospitable space where strangers can cast off their strangeness and become our fellow human beings. The movement from hostility to hospitality is hard and full of difficulties. Our society seems to be increasingly full of fearful, defensive, aggressive people, anxiously clinging to their property and inclined to look at their surrounding world with suspicion, always expecting an enemy to suddenly appear, intrude, or do harm. But still, that is our vocation, to convert the hostis into a hospice, the enemy into a guest, and to create the free and fearless space where brotherhood and sisterhood can be formed and fully experienced.
Take some time now to just write, and I'll let you know as we're nearing the end of it. Take about 1 more minute to wrap your thoughts up. So in our last minutes together, we'll go back and read what you wrote and sit with it. If there are any words that jump out to you as particularly powerful or meaningful at this time, maybe circle them. If you have the opportunity to continue this prayer practice in the future on your own, it's really incredible to go back and just review where you were each time you wrote and what words you circled, see if you find themes in your own life, and just bring yourself back to the space. So just take a few minutes to wrap up. Okay, well, thank you, Leanne and Brandon, both, especially Leanne, for leading us in our prayer this morning. So that's just to sort of prepare your hearts for the rest of this morning, which is going to be a more meditative session. When our leadership team was talking about what we wanted this session to be, we had in mind, like I think it was AJ mentioned before, we didn't want the message of the retreat to be go do more, or go, because many of you already do many things, but to for all of us to be converted a little bit more, so that we do what we do differently going forward. I just wanted to offer a short reflection before we begin our next portion. So, the Holy Spirit is kind of funny sometimes and works in very weird ways. So, last weekend I was at a conference, sort of a conference, for like religious information in Pennsylvania, just across the border, like from Youngstown. And our speaker was Father Tony Gittins. I don't know if anyone's heard of him or heard him speak, but he's a Spiritan priest, and he speaks about interculturality, intercultural mission, and intercultural living. And that was the theme of the weekend. And he offered this really wonderful reflection about Matthew 25. And for those of you who don't remember, in Matthew 25, you have the parable of the 10 virgins with keeping their wicks trimmed, and then you have the sheep and the goats. And Jesus saying, "For I was a stranger and you welcomed me," or "I was a stranger and you did not welcome me." And what Father Tony said that was really interesting is that Jesus self-identified as a stranger in Matthew 25. And I think when we look at the life of Jesus, he did make himself a stranger, and he chose marginality. And this speaks to the larger truth, which is that really all of us are strangers, because our true home is not here. It's in the next life. And that's the letter of the Hebrews says that. We are all resident aliens. We are merely passing through. And I think if we enter into that reality, it requires a sense of vulnerability and surrender, and a willingness to embrace ambiguity and to embrace challenge. So I think the question for all of us going forward is, can we embrace being the stranger? Can we surrender control? Can we allow ourselves to be uncomfortable and to be challenged? And I think that is the way of Jesus. Someone who I think is a model of this for us, who we will be spending some time with this morning, is Dorothy Day. Many of you, I'm assuming pretty much all of you know who that is, and so I'm not going to, give like a biography of who she was. But Dorothy Day is someone who I think chose marginality because she embraced life with the poor. That's going to look different for each one of us. We're not going to all be Dorothy Day, and that's okay. But I think that the call for this morning for me is that transformation, that embracing being a stranger, and the vulnerability that requires. So in our session this morning, we are going to do a sort of a meditative reading of some snippets from Dorothy Day and some of the wisdom that she has for us. So interspersed among you are some readers, and you're going to hear 5 different passages from some of her writings, and some of them are challenging and purposefully so, and they might push against maybe some of our own opinions about things, and that's good, and we can, we'll have time this morning later to talk about that. So we are going to have a meditative reading of these passages, and when we're done with that, we're at our table. We'll just have a quick word or phrase, share a word or phrase that struck you. Just the word or phrase, you don't have to elaborate much more. Then we will actually pass out the readings to all of you, so then you can see them. So the first go round of the reading is going to be to challenge you to really listen. And then when we go have the reading a second time, you can listen, and you can also read along, and maybe you could underline some things, and we'll have opportunity for small groups. So I'll explain the rest as we go along. But first, I'm going to switch microphones. Okay. That's helpful. And I'm going to move away from the speaker so we don't get feedback as much. So I just invite you now to sit up straight in your chairs. And if you can, I usually can't, but put both feet on the ground. And just sort of like open your heart and just pay attention to the words and how they strike you. And look for that word or phrase that really strikes you or speaks to you. It is not enough to feed and shelter those who come. The work of indoctrination must go on. Houses of hospitality will bring workers and scholars together. They will provide a place for industrial workers to discuss Christian principles of organization as set forth in the encyclicals. They will emphasize personal action, personal responsibility, as opposed to political action and state responsibility. They will care for the unemployed and teach principles of cooperation and mutual aid.
We emphasize again the necessity of smallness. The idea, of course, would be that each Christian, conscious of one's duty in the lay apostolate, should take in one of the homeless as an honored guest, remembering Christ's words, but if family complications make this impossible, then let our friends keep in mind the small beginnings.
Many times we have borne the charge that houses of hospitality, this new wrinkle, do more harm than good. It is said that they perpetuate chronic laziness and drunkenness. Christ exercised his good works among those who today will be lumped with chronics. hospitable in his heart, he took in the sinning woman and the thief beside him on the cross.
As for perpetuating the social order, we consider the spiritual and corporal works of mercy in the following of Christ to be the best revolutionary technique and a means of changing the social order rather than perpetuating it. We do it by seeing Christ and serving Christ in friends and strangers and everyone we come in contact with. For he said that a glass of water given to a beggar was given to him. He made heaven hinge on the way we act towards him in his disguise of commonplace, frail and ordinary human beings.
There are wars and rumors of war, poverty and plague, hunger and pain. Still, the sap is rising. Again, there is the resurrection of spring. God's continuing promise to us that He is always with us, with His comfort and joy, that we will only ask. The mystery of the poor is this, that they are Jesus, and what you do for them, you do for Him. It is the only way we have of knowing and believing in our love. The mystery of poverty is that by sharing in it, making ourselves poor in giving to others, we increase our knowledge of and belief in love.
I invite you now to just at your tables go around and each share a word or a phrase. No explanation needed, just a word or a phrase that struck you. So, Matt is passing out the readings, so you can feel free to pass those around the table. It's a challenge, isn't it, to actually really listen. It's a good exercise, I think. So this time you can read and follow along as well. we will read again, and I invite you again to think about maybe something new that strikes you, or something that challenges you, or something, a new insight. It is not enough to feed and shelter those who come. The work of indoctrination must go on. Houses of hospitality will bring workers and scholars together. They will provide a place for industrial workers to discuss Christian principles of organization as set forth in the encyclicals. They will emphasize personal action, personal responsibility, as opposed to political action and state responsibility. They will care for the unemployed and teach principles of cooperation and mutual aid.
We emphasize again the necessity of smallness. The idea, of course, would be that each Christian, conscious of one's duty in the lay apostolate, should take in one of the homeless as an honored guest, remembering Christ's words. But if family complications make this impossible, then let our friends keep in mind the small beginnings.
Many times we have borne the charge that houses of hospitality, this new wrinkle, do more harm than good. It is said that they perpetuate chronic laziness and drunkenness. Christ exercised his good works among those who today would be lumped with chronics. Hospitable in his heart, he took in the sinning woman and the thief beside him on the cross.
As for perpetuating the social order, we consider the spiritual and corporal works of mercy and the following of Christ to be the best revolutionary technique and a means of changing the social order rather than perpetuating it. We do it by seeing Christ and serving Christ in friends and strangers, and everyone we come in contact with. For he said that a glass of water given to a beggar was given to him. He made heaven hinge on the way we act towards him in his disguise of commonplace, frail, and ordinary human beings.
There are wars and rumors of war, poverty and plague, hunger and pain. Still, the staff is rising. Again, there is the resurrection of spring. God's continuing promise to us that he is with us always, with his comfort and joy, if only we will ask. The mystery of the poor is this, that they are Jesus, and what you do for them, you do for him. It is the only way we have of knowing and believing in our love. The mystery of poverty is that by sharing in it, making ourselves poor in giving to others, we increase our knowledge of and belief in love.
So we are going to take 10 minutes for what Joan yesterday referred to as holy silence. And I invite you again to continue to sit with these readings, especially if there's any that you find challenging or confusing, to sit with those and maybe just talk to God about the grace that you need for this day, and what you are to take from these readings, what wisdom you are to take. So 10 minutes of silence. You can feel free to write or just to sit and meditate, and I'll gently bring you back in 10 minutes. hopefully that was a critical time for you. Maybe it was a sleepy time, and that's also okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have some time for small group sharing. So I would ask you to get into groups of 5 or 6, again, like varying, and find a spot just like yesterday. And I'd like you to focus on the reading that we were doing this morning, and to share on what strikes you, what challenges you, and then in general, how are you being called to transformation, to an embracing not just hospitality, but a radical hospitality. So what strikes you, what challenges you, and how are you being called to transformation? So we will, we'll have your small groups end at around 10:45, so you can have a little bit of a break. And then we are going to have a closing prayer ritual at 11 a.m., and that's going to be in the room where we had Mass. So break at around 10:45, and then everybody gather in the room downstairs for our closing prayer ritual. Okay?
Annie,
Yes.
you know that when we have to be out of our room?
Oh,
We don't.
after, in the afternoon,
Okay.
after lunch. Yeah, there's no rush to be out of your room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we put our room keys on the registration table?
Yes.
Probably yes. Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Put your room keys on the registration table. We'll give more instructions to and announcements at the closing ritual. We'll have an evaluation and that kind of thing. So. Okay, so try to find your group, get into a group, and have some good sharing time.
Is the sheet in there too?
No, that's how I do it.
Oh, okay. Okay, fine, no worries.
Yeah, I can stand it.
We can go in with the babies.
There's 3 babies. It's great. Yeah. It's really cute. Come on, that's great.
Are you that copy?
Yeah.